Okay, we are live and we are going to kickstart. So typically, last 10 years, I've been helping all the high school kids to achieve their choice of college and conducting a lot of the college panel sessions. But I changed the way the format since last 2 years or more than 2 years, where I am choosing very selective, highly accomplished high school kids who are going to be into the college as a rising freshman, and then choosing some of the brightest minds from the other grades of the high school to moderate. So it's basically by high school kids and for high school kids. So it's a good combination. So this is the first time I will be muting myself and then letting all the kids to talk about it. And everybody, there are some rules. Please make sure only the panel and the moderator will be live on camera and mics will be unmuted. They will be speaking. If you have any questions, please make sure to post your question in the chat box on Zoom. We have our moderators, Lakshmi and Rikhil. They will be completely running the show. They have set of questions. As any high school kid, they will be going through all those set of questions, asking those panel members. Once the session is done, their questions are completed, then they will ask if there are any questions on the chat, or you can actually unmute and ask a question at the last 10 minutes. And once it is all completed, they will hand over to me and then we will conclude the session. So are you guys all ready? Rikhil and Lakshmi and all the panel members? Okay, fantastic. So now I will be go on mute, and Lakshmi and Rikhil, please introduce yourself and kickstart this one. Thank you, guys.
Hi, my name is Lakshmi, and I am a junior at Green Level High School.
Hey, I'm Rikhil. I'm a junior at Innovation Academy in Alpharetta, Georgia, and I'm excited to be moderating this session.
Just throughout the meeting, try to stay on mute and not turn on your cameras until the end unless you have any questions. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I will let this go to the panelists so they could introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Pranav. I'm Pranav Ravlapati. I'm a senior at Carey Academy. I'm going to Duke University in the fall, and I was also a finalist for the Robertson Scholarship. I'm studying economics and statistics, or that's at least what I intend on studying. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Manasvi. I'm a senior at Panther Creek High School. I'm not fully committed to any university yet, but I'll be majoring in biology and maybe minoring in business. And I'm really excited to be here because I remember around this time last year, I was one of the people listening in and I found it really helpful for me. So I'm really excited to now be a part of this panel and sharing what I've learned over the year.
Hey everyone, my name is Anirudh Janapati. I'm a senior at Green Level High School, and I'm going to be going to Carnegie Mellon for computer science and artificial intelligence. And I hope that'll potentially lead me into a career in quantitative finance because I'm really interested in applying mathematical models and computational models to finance. So that's what I hope to do after college. And then something I like to do in my spare time is I really enjoy playing and watching soccer. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here today and hopefully share some knowledge with all of you.
Okay, so we'll start with some of the questions we are prepared to ask you guys. So the first one is, what was the most challenging part of the college application process for you guys?
I think for me, it was writing my common application essay. And I think the biggest reason is the prompts are very, very broad. So you can write about a lot of different things. But that means that you have to be very intentional on sort of the narrative and like what qualities you want to bring out about yourself. So it took me virtually the entire summer to figure out what exactly I wanted to talk about. And I kept refining my essays over and over again. So it was difficult, I think, from the starting point. But looking back, as long as you give yourself ample time and you just trust the process and let yourself just don't like force anything, you just try to bring out your best qualities very naturally, it becomes very natural and it's not as bad of a process as it might start out to be.
I think that the most challenging part of the college application process for me was sort of determining like what narrative I wanted to use to like portray all of the work that I've completed throughout high school, especially through my essays, because I really wanted to highlight like my best qualities, and it was definitely time consuming to figure out how to structure my personal statement and sort of pick out which events were most meaningful to me as a person. So it really took me a lot of time and self-reflection. So I would definitely say don't underestimate how long it might take you, because for some people it might like click instantly, but like for others, it'll definitely take a lot more introspection and analysis on your growth as a person.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely echo Pranav's and Manu's thoughts here because it definitely takes a lot of time to figure out exactly what sort of theme you want your application to revolve around because you want to be conveying a clear theme to admissions officers so they know who you are and what you're trying to go into. And yes, it is extremely time consuming. So definitely start with your Common App in the summer. Try to finish your Common App essay by the end of the summer so that you're leaving yourself ample time to work on your supplemental essays because those add up over time like really highly. There's a lot of time that you have to be spending for each of those. So you want to leave yourself ample time for supplemental essays throughout your first semester of senior year. And then something else I'd probably like to touch on is the stress that comes with the process. That's something that I definitely struggled with throughout the first semester of senior year. It was probably the most stressed I've honestly been in my life. And so it's really important to stay grounded in the things that you really enjoy doing, the things that you're accustomed to doing, like hanging out with your friends once in a while, or maybe going to the gym, or playing a sport, or watching a sport. Just things that you enjoy so that you're not becoming too bogged up in the admissions process and you're not just constantly thinking about it to where you're becoming too stressed and that's harming your ability to work on your essays. So yeah, just finding a balance between working on your essays, perfecting those, and also just enjoying life at the same time. So yeah.
Thank you all for those thoughts. Yeah, it's important to like manage your time well and make sure you're not stressed. So yeah. The next question would be, how did you decide which colleges to apply to and what factors mattered most to you?
Think for me, if I had to like rank everything that I considered, I think the first thing I would consider is the community. Second, like how good the school was for my specific program. And then third, I think this became a factor more recently, but also like proximity to home. And I think for me, like Duke hit all of those marks like really, really well. The community is great. A lot of my really, really good friends go there, and just like, hanging out with them, like just talking to other people on Duke, I realized that like everyone is really passionate about what they do, and they're always looking to help other people out, which is I think something that was really important to me because I think that that's something that I like to do as well. I think, and second, like Duke is very good for economics, and I just really enjoy that, and so it kind of worked out very naturally for me. And then proximity to home, I think for me, I don't know what clicked, but I think like starting like maybe late junior year, I just realized like at least for college, it would be nice if I could be closer to home, just as like I'm kind of like feeling myself out, like finding like this like kind of intermediary thing between like independence fully and like figuring out like after high school plans. So I think that I'm kind of in this like position where I can like kind of live my own life independently, but if anything comes up, I do have resources nearby, which to me was really important as I transition away. So, and I don't think that these three factors are like universal by any means, but it's very important to kind of guide yourself by what you want to stay true to yourself by and like things that actually matter to you versus like going on US news and looking at the top 10 schools and picking off of that, because just because the school is good doesn't mean you will necessarily enjoy your life there. And people kind of miss that out and they think that no matter what school they go to, as long as it's very, very highly ranked, they're going to do well. And that's often not the case. So you will succeed if you think that the environment in the community is very, very tailored towards you and will allow you to actually find yourself and find success. So just kind of pick out a couple of qualities and then kind of frame it through that. And if there's a top ranked school that happens to hit all of those marks, then by all means you should apply there, but never apply to a school just because it's good innately.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And also, I think for me, I decided also based upon my major and sort of like the overall clubs and opportunities in the surrounding areas. And I found that I did a lot of research and this really like carried into my supplementals because I was able to show how badly I wanted to go to this school and how it would be a really good fit for me. So I think that's really important to do your research so you know that this is something that you would want to attend. And I also really focused heavily on whether the campus culture was inviting and warm or not. And I also did have distance as one of my less important factors, but I still think it carried weight in my decision process because I did apply to a lot of in-state schools. I would definitely say take the time and really do your research because you're not just attending this school like you would be in high school. You're going to practically live there for at least your first 1 to 2 years. So, really get to know the school as well as you can. Make sure that you truly see yourself living here and make sure you put in the work. Like, do online research. And if you are able to, do visits. They definitely also have like Zoom meetings and things. You can talk to like alumni, like really get to know the school and make sure that you truly want to go there. So yeah.
Yeah, Manu and Pranav basically covered everything that I wanted to talk about. But something else that I would like to talk about, like once you have all these factors in consideration, is kind of looking at acceptance rates to where you're having a certain number of safety schools, a certain number of target schools, and maybe potentially if these colleges do fit for you, some reach schools because you don't want to be spending all your time on just a couple of reach schools that almost no one gets into and that you have a very low chance of getting into. I mean, you don't want to restrict yourself to that. So you kind of want to have a wide range of colleges that meet your expectations and your needs in terms of maybe proximity to home, the strength of their programs, the programs that you're interested in, campus culture, things like that. But once you kind of have all of that down, you kind of want to have a range of acceptance rates just to make sure that you're comfortable wherever you're going and that you're not just limiting yourself to the most competitive colleges that are in the US. And so that's something that I definitely highlight as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the good advice on which colleges to apply to. So, talking about essays, how did you guys approach writing your personal statement and college essays, like the supplement essays and the personal statement?
So for my personal statement, I kind of had like a very overarching theme that I wanted to convey, and it just kind of just like came to me like, oh, the one thing I did is like I would write down like every like small idea that I had just in any page, but as long as you keep track of that, as long as you don't forget about that stuff, it's really really helpful and it'll pay dividends in the long term. But I just had some basic idea of what I wanted to write about, and it took me about a month just to like kind of figure that out and just like talk about every single experience that I've had that relates to it. And once I found an experience that I could actually write about for 650 words, I started writing my first draft and I took in my counselor. We kind of talked through it, like, what is it actually trying to convey? And I had to write 4 drafts of my personal statement, where each draft was pretty much completely new from the first one. So keep in mind that the process is very tenuous, but as you kind of write more and more and kind of lean into that process of finding the best essay idea, you will in turn get better writing your supplemental essays when the first semester starts. So that's really important. But two, you'll get more comfortable with the process of like kind of crafting a narrative around a certain theme. So in the summer or whenever you decide to start your personal statement, it's always better to start earlier than later. Just think of as many things that have impacted you very strongly over the course of your high school career or over the course of your life, and just keep that in a document. And there'll be certain prompts where some things might work and some things where it don't work. So kind of figure that out, but just kind of lean into that. There's no perfect formula for writing a very, very good essay. It's very, very contextual to you as a person, you as an applicant, and what you want to do later in life. So I don't think anyone here can necessarily tell you you have to do this, but just stay true to yourself and just enjoy the process.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I also think that I made a list of all the meaningful events in my life. And whenever I thought of an idea for an essay, no matter like how like weird I thought it was, I still I still wrote it down in like an ongoing list in my notes app so that I wouldn't forget it. And then when the time like rolled around in like the summer, I sat down and I really took the time to piece together my ideas. I really think that you can almost go any sort of way that you want because it's your story. The prompts aren't that specific. There's like a lot that you can do. So I think it's really important to just like be true to yourself and showcase your talents and all the interesting things about you, like all the nuances that no one would like be able to pick up on just from like reading your activities and test scores. So once I wrote and I rewrote because it was a really grueling process. I let at least three people read my essay and give me feedback on it. And I really do think it's important to sort of listen to feedback and see what people think about your idea. But also, you should always remain true to yourself and do what you think is best for showcasing yourself.
Yeah, and something else I would add is you kind of want your essay to target like solely yourself. I mean, some people make the mistake of, okay, this person was really influential in my life, and then they end up like spending their whole essay talking about that other person or talking about another group of people. When in reality, college admissions officers, they want to know about you. They want to know what you've done, how certain experiences have impacted you and how they've allowed you to grow as an individual, and then how that growth is gonna improve their campus. So you really want to highlight how some sort of captivating, or it doesn't even have to be captivating, just some sort of experience has allowed you to grow as an individual and impact other people positively. I'd say is the biggest advice I could give on this. And if you try to find those sort of events, and if you try to really highlight your growth as an individual as a result of that event, or maybe even as a result of another person, that'll be really impressive to admissions officers. So yeah.
Thank you for those thoughts on writing essays and all. Another question is, what are some things you wish you had known before starting the application process?
Um, I think for me, like looking back, I wish I had known like sort of better ways to deal with the stress because I think the biggest thing that happened to me over the course of my first semester is that I knew that like it would be like it's obviously a very stressful process. Like this decides a lot of like the next 4 years of your life. But I just wish I had known that, like, in spite of all the stress, the best thing you can do is not lean into it and feed into your own stress more and more, but actually take time and hang out with your friends and still do stuff that you wouldn't do if you weren't writing college apps, like Anirudh said. Because a lot of people think that, oh, if you're not stressed during the first semester of your senior year, you're doing something wrong. But I think that mentality kind of creates more problems than it does like actual ways to deal with like things in your life. And just keep in mind that like this is a very stressful part of your life, but the last thing you should do is feed into that stress more and more. Like still like you're going to be a lot more busy than you are going to be normally. You're going to be a lot more stressed than you are normally, but you need to remember that do things that you would normally do to deal with those stressing mechanisms and don't just think you have to live in this state of constant stress and turmoil of what's going to happen next because that one will be bad on your mental health. It's a very important part when you're actually taking so much time to write your college applications, but it can directly affect your college applications because now you're not spending as much time thinking about the best idea for your essay or how you want to craft your narrative or preparing for an interview, but you're just dealing with the stress more and more, which can have a very, very overarching effect on all parts of your application. So I think I wish I just known to like take your time and just do things for fun still.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think it is super important to take time for yourself. And I wish that I'd known how long the process would really be because, like, yeah, I knew that, oh, yeah, this would take up basically my entire first semester. But I didn't really consider, like, the gap between early action and regular decision. Like, yeah, it feels like all the weight has been lifted off your shoulders when you submit those early decision applications. But then you still have that month or two until January where you're still working, you're still tweaking your essays and activities, you're still doing your coursework, you're still trying to have fun with your friends and live up your senior year. So it is a really grueling process. And if you're like still taking that rigorous coursework, just make sure that you're also staying on top of your grades. While you're also fixing up your essays and making sure that you're really putting your best foot forward with your college applications.
Yeah, for sure. Something else I would probably highlight is I kind of knew this going into it, and a lot of people do, but I feel like people underestimate the extent of it is the subjectivity of the process. Admissions officers, one day they might accept a certain application, and on another day, the exact same application, they could maybe reject it. Like, who knows what's going through their mind while they're reading your application at a certain time of day, on a certain day. You don't know what other things are impacting their lives at that moment of time. And so what I'd say is take rejection with a grain of salt, take waitlist with a grain of salt. None of this speaks to who you are as an individual, your character, even your academic ability. It really is just subjectivity at the end of the day. There's no objective guaranteed way to determine who deserves a spot and who doesn't. And so that's something that admissions officers work on. But really do not take this process personally. It's really subjective. And I feel like a lot of people get bogged down by that. That really affects their mental health, where they're like, why am I not good enough to get into this university and someone else is? But you really don't know what went through the minds of admissions officers while they were reading application. I feel like that's something that you should start at least mentally preparing yourself for. Obviously, put your best foot forward, try your best to get into these universities, see what sort of specific admissions criteria they're looking for and the specific characteristics that they're looking for you to convey through your application. But just know at the end of the day, once you hit submit on the application, it's basically out of your control. And so yeah, just focus on the other things in life that you normally do, like Pranav said. So yeah.
So some of you guys talked about how stressful your first semester of senior year was. How did you guys balance your schoolwork and extracurriculars while doing college apps?
I think the main thing that I did was like I'm kind of like a serial procrastinator. So what I would actually do is like if I'm procrastinating one thing, I would just work on the other thing. And so what ended up happening was like if I had a homework assignment and like I'm kind of just like busy or I don't want to do it, I would just think of college topics to write about, or I would start writing my essay. And it might seem like a very marginal thing to just work on things for like a couple of minutes at a time when you don't have a lot, like when you don't have chunks of hours, but that can really add up. And as you start like, and the other thing is like, you will be surprised when you get a really good idea for your essay. I think half of my essay ideas, I was in India for a couple of weeks over the summer, and like I would just have like an idea while playing Geometry Dash in the car. And so it's just these very like random moments where you will get like something just clicks in your head and you have a really good idea. So what I would do is like going into the school year, employ that same mentality and just work on things as frequent as possible without overdoing it, obviously. But as you increase the frequency of how many times you work, you'll be able to have better ideas without overstressing yourself, and you'll make so slow progress over and over again, right? One college application is going to take you like, months to be honest. But if you can work, if that time frame can be kind of spread out and also like consistently worked on, then you'll see a lot better results. Which is why like consistency is probably the biggest thing I would recommend when it comes to working on college applications. Just don't go like 2, 3 weeks without working on it, because that can kind of mess up your flow and all that stuff.
Yeah, I really agree with all the points that you made. I think that one of like the applications that I used for staying on top of everything was Google Calendar, which is something that I've been using since my sophomore year. I really think that this was super helpful for me because I always struggle with finding like which times I want to do something, and I feel like it's so much more better than just like a to-do list, because you can just take those easy 10 minutes out of your day in the morning and then just plan out your entire day. That way you're like allotting time for each thing so that you don't like forget to do it. Because that like little sticky note with all of the things that you need to do, it'll get lost in your backpack. Like you don't even know if you're gonna end up doing everything. So make sure that you set up like alerts, like make sure that you are staying on top of your things, because it's really easy to just be like, oh, let me just only work on college apps, or oh, let me just focus on school. Like you need to balance everything, and you also need to find sort of the time to hang out with your friends, because at the end of the day you might not go to the same universities as them. So you definitely want to spend time with everyone. Take some time with your family. Just make sure that you're doing everything that you possibly can, and that really just comes from having a really balanced schedule and just making sure that you're staying on top of things. So yeah.
Yeah, so something I'd like to add on top of time management, which is of course extremely important, allotting time to different activities and ensuring that you're completing everything to the best of your ability. That's super important. Something else I would say that really helped me with college apps specifically is staying really organized. So sort of have, I'd say, a Google folder, right, where you're dedicating like all of your college apps, all your college information to that folder. And then within the folder, make a different folder for each college. And within that folder, have a document for maybe interview prep if it's applicable to that school. And then a document for their supplemental essays. So I feel like staying organized like that and having everything in one place really makes it easier. And it prevents the sort of the maybe stress that you might get of like everything being chaotic. If you have everything like all over the place, like you open your Google Drive and all you're seeing are these like different documents in different places, different folders, that sort of adds to the stress and the chaotic nature of the application process. So I feel like on top of time management, really staying organized in the way that you're sort of uh like writing supplemental essays or writing down information about different colleges, I feel like that really helps with your time management and being able to compartmentalize between, say, college apps and your extracurricular activities or your schoolwork or hanging out with your friends or just doing the other things that you like to do. So yeah, definitely stay organized. And yeah, like Manu said, manage your time well. Yeah.
Thank you all for those thoughts. What role did letters of recommendation play in your application, and how did you choose who recommended you?
I think that letters of recommendation are like very underrated, and I think that oftentimes they're very overlooked because, like, speaking from a point of like what actually you're submitting, they're the only thing on your college application that you yourself are not writing and manufacturing to submit to a college. So they are the only kind of legitimate way to see how other people within your school community actually, or any community for that matter, view you instead of you creating your own sort of narrative. And the reason that's so important is like, yes, a lot of high achieving, like high ranked colleges want to see high achieving students, but they want to see high achieving students that actually contribute towards their community and make a positive impact. So they would much rather see someone who is, raising their hand, very active, very social, and like just making like a positive impact within their classroom than someone who gets very, very good grades, but is in the back of the class and never really contributes. So kind of having that mentality in mind can really kind of frame into perspective why letters of recommendation are so important. For me, I will admit, like I got very lucky in the sense that I am very interested in mathematics and like economics. And the two teachers I got were my calc teacher and my stats teacher, and my econ teacher, who also was my debate coach and my homeroom advisor for 4 years. And my calc teacher was also like my Stuco advisor. So I met with them a lot, and they saw me contribute to the school community in a lot of different ways. And I built that relationship very, very closely over years. So they didn't just speak to me about they in their like letters of recommendation when I kind of asked them like vaguely what they talked about. They weren't just speaking to my ability in the classroom, but rather my character as a person and also my contributions to the school community as a whole. So I think kind of using that lens to frame who you want. Yes, if you have a teacher that is very like active within like your desired profession or major, that's a very good indicator of who you want. But make sure they can actually speak to your academic qualities and personal qualities and not just like some sort of superficial view. Because colleges really look for people who make a positive impact in the community, not just the classroom.
Yeah, I really agree with everything that you said. And I think that letters of recommendation are really important, like you said, because they really give a cool perspective to the overall narrative that you're trying to convey to the admissions committee. So make sure that you really choose teachers or people that can really speak to your true character. Personally, I chose my AP chemistry teacher because I had him for the entire school year. I didn't just have him for one semester, so I got to know him well and I performed well in the class. And I also chose my AP Lang teacher because I really enjoyed the class and I think I participated a lot in it. I also remember times where I would stay after school near the AP season to work on doing my essays in that 2 hour time frame. So that really showed my dedication and how motivated I was. So I think that really helped my teacher understand who I am as a person, and it gave her a lot to write about in my recommendation letters. I also think it's super important to ask your teacher as early as possible because they have a lot of students to write for, and you want to make sure that you're making sure that you will get the teachers that you want and you don't have to ask a teacher that you don't really know. And I also think that because there are a lot of students and you really want to stand out, make sure that you're reminding them of all the little things that you would want them to hopefully discuss in your letters of recommendation because they'll remember it and they'll be like, oh yeah, this student did do this. Oh yeah, they were really active in my class. Oh yeah, I remember this thing. Like you want them to have those moments where they're like, okay, I know this student really well, especially if you really want them to write that strong letter of recommendation. Just build that relationship, make sure that they know about you, and make sure that you remind them to discuss those things so that they can really speak to your character.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else I'd like to add is, so I personally had three recommendation letters. Typically it's two. You do only need two. But I decided to have a third one because I feel like I had another teacher that could speak to my character as well as my academic abilities. But something that I feel like is really important is when you're having two recommendation letters is to prevent them from being like really similar. So what I mean by that is try to have one of your recommenders be someone that speaks to your academic capabilities and your performances within the academic setting. So they're probably someone that's seen you in the classroom a lot. They've seen you been really active in the classroom, an active learner, an active collaborator with the people around you. And they'll be able to speak to a lot of that, which colleges really appreciate in their academic setting. But something else that you kind of want to highlight with your other recommender potentially is your character outside of the school, or maybe not even outside the school, but things that separate you from the academic setting. So that could be like extracurricular activities, maybe research opportunities. Try to have a second recommender that can speak to those abilities, so you don't come across as one-dimensional, and that so that you're sort of portraying both sides of yourself. And then together it'll create some sort of like cohesive message about who you are, what you're trying to achieve in college, what you'll bring to the college campus. And so I feel like that's also something that I tried to do and that eventually paid off for me. So yeah, that's something I definitely recommend for everyone to try out.
So you guys talked about how letters of recommendation are a big part of your college apps, but do you guys think standardized tests like the SAT and ACT are also big parts? And how did you prepare for them?
I think it's kind of hard to say, like I think especially with standardized testing, it really varies college per college on like what their sort of institutional priorities are. I do know that like the Ivy League schools are going back to like reinstating them, so that's something to consider. I think regardless, if you are interested in taking the SAT or the ACT, I took the SAT. I think again, I think you're hearing this response a lot from me, but just consistency is really what matters. The test in and of itself is not hard. If you didn't have a timer on it, it's a very easy test. However, the problems come from like testing your test taking abilities, your logic, your pattern recognition, all of which can just be improved if you just sit down and accept the fact that for like a month and a half, if that, you just need to grind for every single week for multiple hours. And I think just getting in that mentality, one, well, it's a good test of like how things can get harder in college and like kind of having that same mentality, but just kind of sticking through it and just continuing and being very consistent in your study patterns will be very, very helpful. And I think that specifically one thing that really helped for me is on top of that, what I needed to sort of break through and get the score that I wanted was taking the test in the morning, like emulating almost like an actual test and like waking up on a Saturday morning at like 7:30 a.m. and like taking it by 8 because, for me, I'm a night person and like I'm not used to doing stuff waking up like on early on the weekends. So I think doing that kind of helped me prepare for the real life test setting, and that eventually worked out for me.
Yeah, I agree with all of those points. And I do think that there is no formula, also, like you mentioned, Pranav, because it really depends on the school. But I do think it is important to have a good score to really demonstrate your capabilities. And I really think that it's so important to practice. Like, don't underestimate that, especially with a timer, because you want to make sure that your timing is perfect before you walk into that test. You don't want to be taking too much time on a certain question because if you do that, you're just going to spend too much time on one or two, and then you're going to miss out the five that you could have easily got if you had the time. And I think it's really important to stay calm on test day and make sure that you memorize all of your formulas before, because the math is pretty simple for the most part, but it's more about your application and not really based on how hard it is. because you really only need to know up until like math 2 basically for the SAT. And then for the ACT in particular, I think that the math questions definitely get harder as you progress. So you want to make sure that you're spending less time on the questions in the beginning. So really work on that pacing so that you save up time for more harder questions. And this really applies to all the other sections, even if you're taking the SAT or the ACT. That way you can just double check the questions that you might have skipped over, the ones that you're not really sure about. And I really do think that test scores are important because they convey your test taking abilities, and they also really showcase your like desire to put in the work, because I really think that it's not about how smart you are, it's just like how much work are you willing to put in to get that high test score. But I don't think that test scores are everything. Like there are other things that speak to who you can be at that college. So yeah.
Yeah, so something I'd like to add is test taking is definitely important, but what it serves as for admissions officers at least is a benchmark. So once you reach a certain level or a certain score, once you're beyond that, any difference in score doesn't really matter. So what I'd recommend is sort of look at the colleges you're applying to, try to find like the 50th percentile score. So that's like typically what the average student at that school has. And if you're going for that college, like if that's like your top choice, right? Try to aim for that score or higher. If it doesn't happen, don't worry. What I've understood from this process is, say a difference between a score of like a 1540 and a 1560. The difference is extremely negligible, but a lot of people get bogged down in like this idea of getting a couple of more questions right. Just if I add like 10 more points to my score, then I'm gonna get in. When in reality, that's just not true. At a certain point, a difference in score doesn't matter, but you really want to be aiming for at least that benchmark. So definitely aim for that benchmark. Once you're there, don't waste your time on taking more tests. There's a lot of other things that you can be like contributing your time towards, like strengthening your extracurricular activities or strengthening your essays or developing a relationship with your teachers. So you should also be focusing on that. But for test taking specifically, just focus on trying to get to that benchmark. Like Pranav and Manu said, it's more of a test about your ability to take tests than it is a test of intelligence. And so really honing in on those test taking strategies is really important. Something I'd really recommend is Khan Academy because it's a free resource and they're directly partnered with College Board. So they're receiving like practice tests and questions from College Board directly, which is the organization that administers the SAT. And so doing a lot of Khan Academy, just repeating those types of questions and getting used to the way that questions are asked, the certain topics that are covered in these questions is really important. And something that I've recognized a lot is that a lot of people struggle more with the English than they do with the math, because what I find is that the math is like, it's just an objective answer. There's only one possible answer, right? Like you calculate and you get a certain answer. But with English, it feels more subjective to where you feel like there's like 2 or 3 potential answer choices, and that's where it becomes really difficult. So I'd say focus a lot, especially on practicing English test taking strategies, and trying to figure out how you can improve your English side to the best of your ability. And with math, I'd say it's just basic concepts that you need to sort of hone in on, and you'll be fine with SAT. So yeah.
Thank you all for those thoughts. Y'all mentioned that you need to like manage your time well, practice a lot, and stay organized. So, what strategies did you use to stay organized throughout your application process?
I think we all spoke a little bit about this in prior questions, but like Anirudh said, I just want to echo this is like I was like almost like OCD about how organized I kept my college folder because I would make sure that like every single college had its own specific folders. If there was additional information I need to submit beyond just the supplemental essays or interview prep, I kept that within the folder. And I think that just really helped me like formulate my thoughts. Like I would have a specific idea, a specific section for brain dumping, my activity list, my additional info, the supplementals themselves. And I think just and again, that's not like there's not some sort of one organizational method that is perfect for everyone. Just have an organizational method that works for you and make sure you understand it really well. Because I promise, like streamlining that stuff, it's the very small stuff, but it matters so much in the long run. And as you add more colleges to your list or as you get more stress, just knowing that you have this very, very solid organizational system was really, really helpful for me in ensuring that I had all my thoughts down and I knew that I was putting my best foot forward.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I definitely think that staying organized, like whether that's like a to-do list, a calendar, whatever you do, it's like just make sure that it works for you. Like that comes with trial and error. And I also think that one of the things that was helpful for me was sort of having a spreadsheet with all of the deadlines for each college because it's not just like, oh, I'm submitting my application, now I'm done. Like you might also want to apply to a scholarship. You need to fill out your financial aid. You need to apply to honors college or other programs if you're interested in that. So you don't want to miss out on any of these opportunities. So you definitely want to write down everything in the spreadsheet so that you're prepared beforehand. And also, I thought it was really helpful to have a Google Doc with my essays, one with my supplementals, and like just having everything in like one folder and like really accessible so that if you need it, if you need to do any revision, it's there, it's accessible, and you can do it. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely echo the sentiments on the staying organized with the Google Drive, the Google folders, the Google Docs. And then also like Manu mentioned, I also had a spreadsheet where I was sort of keeping track of which colleges I've submitted, what their due dates are, any additional notes that I have, maybe if I need to do interview prep for those schools. So that really helped me visualize everything and kind of help with the stress of like, oh, do I have like these many colleges left or am I done? So that really helped. And then it's also really satisfying, like once you like hit like, oh, I submitted like my final college, it's just really satisfying. You feel like, okay, I've accomplished something. So now I can get back to enjoying my life, at least like to how it was before college apps. So that's really nice. Uh, and then something else I wanted to mention was you kind of want to have in your Google Drive, like for each specific college, try to have like different copies of your essays so that you can send them to different people because you really want multiple perspectives on your essays. You want multiple people that you trust to be reading these. That could be maybe an English teacher, maybe your school counselor, maybe your older sibling that has college experience. So kind of reaching out to those people, having different copies of essays that you can send to these people and sort of receive feedback on the essays, receive edits on the essays, that can be really helpful too. That you trust to be reading in terms of staying organized and things of that nature. Yeah. Experience?
So you guys got into some really good colleges. How did you handle rejection from others or waitlist decisions? And what advice would you give to students facing that?
So I got an early decision, so I didn't face any like innate college rejections, but so a lot of scholarships that I had, like I would make it sort of like the final stage, and like I didn't get it, and like I think that the biggest thing, and I think that Anirudh like really hit the point on this is like at these higher levels, like it is such a crapshoot. And with that in mind, after literally decades of having the Common App and like all of these like application devices, we still don't have a formula for how to get into college. And I think having that mentality is really, really important because no matter what, you could do everything right and you still don't get the result that you necessarily want. And I think that having that in mind, like realizing that it's at some point it's beyond you and it's just about what that college is looking for at that given moment in time. You could be the valedictorian of your class, you could do this, you could do that, but it just might not be what that college is looking for that specific year. And it's kind of a hard thing to deal with. I think like understanding that sometimes like you could put your best foot forward and not necessarily get the result that you want, but just remember that it's not an indicator of your success as a student or your success as a person, and just embrace all the experiences and understand that no matter what you will succeed. And having that in mind really, really helps moving forward because college is not the end all be all. There's so many years beyond that. It's a stepping stone. And it's not like a definition of your character or your values or your success or who you are as a person, and just keeping that in mind when you move forward, even if you don't end up at your top choice university, and understanding that you can still succeed and do better at people at Harvard than like Harvard or Stanford. I think that kind of key thing is very important. I understand it's not a very easy thing to digest. It definitely will take time. Don't expect to understand it immediately, but just keep that in the back of your mind, and I think it'll really help with your mentality over time.
Yeah, I really agree with all of those points. And I do think that it is really disappointing if you get a wait list or a rejection. So I definitely think that it's really important to take some time and process it and then remind yourself like it's not the end of the world because there's so much more to just like getting into this certain college. Like even if it is your top choice, like you just have to process it and realize that like as long as you're continuing to put in the work, like you'll get where you want to be, and it's not really a reflection of your true abilities. You just have to move forward. And that's why it's really important that you cast a wide net in terms of your applications. You don't just apply to all T20 schools. Like you need to apply to safeties because who knows, you might get like a really good scholarship at like one of the schools that you weren't considering. Like I know one of my friends, she got a full ride to a school that she wasn't really considering, but now this is where she's attending. So I really think it's really important that you just keep a positive mindset because you will end up where you need to be.
Yeah, so something I would say, and I know this sounds corny, is that rejection is redirection. So I feel like if you have, say, a top choice, right, and it's really competitive, and say you get rejected or waitlisted, I feel like you're gonna be really pleasantly surprised by the alternative choices that you've gotten into. There's a lot of things that go into making a college experience enjoyable, and the US rankings is not the primary one. You know what I mean? So campus culture, the people that you're surrounding yourself by, the strength of the curriculum, those are things that really go into making a college experience enjoyable. And even if you do get rejected or waitlisted from a couple of your top choices, which also happened to me, it's really important to understand that, like Pranav said, it really is a crapshoot. It's not a comment on your character, your intelligence as an individual. It really is just the way it is. It's just such a subjective process that you can never really pinpoint what exactly got you rejected or waitlisted. And something else that I've heard some people talk about is how a lot of these like top colleges, they could make another class with a bunch of rejections and waitlists and still not lose the quality of the class that they accepted. So they could genuinely remove the class that they accepted, create a whole new class of people that they rejected and waitlisted, and they would not lose any quality, and they could in fact gain on that quality. So nowadays, like so many people are applying. The number of spots at these colleges is not increasing at the same rate, or not increasing at all, in fact. And so it really is just a crapshoot. So just understand that. And just know that like rejection is redirection. You're gonna be happy where you end up, and it's all gonna work out in the end. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you all for your thoughts. So did you apply for financial aid or any scholarships? And if so, how was the process for you?
I didn't apply for financial aid, but I did apply to the Robertson Scholarship, which is like a Duke UNC like full ride situation. And that process, it was kind of like, to be honest, like I think the scholarship in and of itself is great, and like their values I really strongly align with, but there was not a lot of communication. And so the basic premise was like you submit an online application with a couple of essays and like video interviews, and then it was just 3 rounds of interviews up to finals until that. So I think the process for me, I think the Robertson application really helped frame like kind of how I view college applications, because they don't ask for your transcript or any of stuff like that. They really just care about the quality of character that you are and who you are as a person and what type of contributions you'll make to the community. And that really reflected in the questions that they asked you in their interviews and their essay prompts and like their video essays. So I think for that, the Robertson really, really helped me in understanding like what type of qualities I want to push forward in a college application, and realize that it's really just beyond like just grades and stuff. And so that, I mean, that process was just like, I just kept like it started in like November and it ended for me in like late February. So it was just kind of like every month there'd be like a new interview cycle, and I just like kind of kept up with that. So that was like, my experience with the Robertson specifically.
Yeah. So I did apply for financial aid and scholarships, and I do think that the process is really time consuming. And to me, it felt like filling out the common application all over again. And with scholarships, you do need to write essays, so you need to make sure that you're allotting time for that. And there will be interviews if you do advance. And I definitely think that you need to use that doc, like I mentioned earlier, and compile your ideas and make sure that your essays are really strong and compelling. And also, if you are doing financial aid, filing the FAFSA and CSS profiles does take a lot of time. Make sure that you do that if you do want to get aid. And you will need your parents' help. So make sure that you let them know about it way in advance, like at least a month or two in advance. and do your research and make sure that you know what documents that you need to fill out all of this aid because it is time consuming. But if you sit down and work with them, you can get it done in a couple of hours. So yeah.
Yeah, so kind of what Manu was talking about, there's two, in terms of financial aid, there's two main financial aid forms. So one is the FAFSA, and one is CSS. So FAFSA is basically accepted by every single college, but certain colleges only accept the CSS profile. So you'll want to complete both of those. And so they are time consuming. So I'd recommend sort of starting them in the first semester, of your senior year and trying to finish them as soon as possible, maybe by December. Because my understanding is that they have a certain pool of money that they're allowed to give financial aid from. And so it's on a first come, first serve basis. So the earlier you fill it out, the earlier your financial aid is able to be met and the more of that pool of money you're able to receive towards your financial aid. So it's really important that you try to complete that as soon as possible. And then look at your specific colleges and see whether they accept the FAFSA or the CSS or if they require both. Different colleges have different requirements. So yeah, definitely stay updated on that. And then something else that's also important is there's a lot of big scholarships out there, like the Coca-Cola scholarship, where there's large sums of money. But those kind of scholarships are the ones that attract the most talented students and the most number of students. So I'd say apply to those, but it's also really important to apply to the smaller scholarships that a lot of people don't hear about. Because even though they're lesser in the amount of money that they're giving you, small amounts of money add up over time and you can really get like a decent sum of money, a decent chunk of the money of your college cost sort of cut away with those smaller scholarships. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for those. Look for maybe college specific scholarships like Pranav was talking about, the Robertson scholarship. I know NC State has a full ride called the Park Scholarship. UNC Charlotte has the Lehman Scholarship. So definitely keep an eye out for those and see which ones you want to spend your time applying for. Because yeah, it might pay off in the long run and you might end up getting some money. So yeah, for sure.
So looking back, would there be anything you would have done differently when applying to colleges?
I think maybe like I think a lot of the stuff that I learned throughout the process, like I learned because of doing the process, like having a strong organizational system, like kind of like figuring out my narrative. So obviously, I think that like if I had that all of that knowledge before I actually applied, like it feels kind of weird to say like if I had the knowledge that I gained through applying before I applied, I think my application would have turned out differently. But honestly, it's very hard to say that because I think a lot of the best learning you get is from trial and error. So I think that that really helped me in kind of like going through the process. I think the one thing that I would change is I did have this idea that like there are certain things that kind of get you into college and like there's a certain formula for getting into a top school and I had this like preconception that I think a lot of people have, but just the one thing I wish I had kept in mind earlier is like there's no formula. It's really dependent on who you are as a person and what you want and what that specific college wants. So, kind of keeping that in mind and staying true to my passions, I wish I learned a lot earlier in my high school journey.
Yeah, I think all of those points are really important. And I really agree with the whole trial and error thing because I really think that the only way that you'll learn is when you experience it. Yes, it's really important to make sure that you listen to people who have already gone through the process and to get advice and talk to your counselors, advisors, any teachers, anyone that can help you. But the only way that you really learn is by doing it. So I definitely think you really need to give yourself an enough time so that you're like really honing in on your essays, you're perfecting your activity list, like you're getting everything done. You really need to give yourself that time, and you also need to make sure that you're staying positive no matter what and you're staying on top of everything. So I definitely think that time is just the way that you use your time is definitely the most important, and that's something that everyone needs to know before they go into this process.
Yeah, so something that I wish I'd done a little bit differently is that like my essays were strong for sure, but I feel like they could have been stronger if I introspected a little more. Like Manu was talking about this earlier, I feel like the entire college application process is just a lot of introspection, a lot of reflection. about what you've done throughout the course of high school, how that's impacted who you are, how you've grown as an individual, and how you've been able to use that growth to maybe impact the people around you. And I feel like if I'd maybe put in a little more like introspection, a little more reflection, rather than like straight away like getting into writing essays, I feel like maybe I could have come out with stronger essays that could have led to better results for certain colleges. So yeah, that's definitely something I'd recommend. Try to think a lot about what you achieved over these past 4 years, what kind of person you've grown to become over these past 4 years, and really try to highlight that for colleges and try to highlight what you'll bring to their college campuses, because at the end of the day, that's really what they want to hear about. They want to hear how you're gonna improve the campus culture, how you're gonna improve the academic culture of the college by collaborating with the people around you, by bringing certain academic knowledge into their campus. So a lot of introspection and being able to write about that introspection, to be able to write about who you are as an individual and how you've grown over the course of these 4 years. So yeah.
Thank you all for those thoughts. Now we're going to be asking questions from the chat. So the first question is, when should you be starting your college application?
I think that like start thinking about it in your junior year. But I think the thing I was thinking about is like, especially when I talk to like some of my friends at school who are like way younger than me and like they're already thinking about the college process, is that like you kind of like lose the legitimacy and the sort of like actual passion behind a lot of what you do if you think that it innately ties to your college application. So I think that your first really 3 years of high school should be to develop who you are as a person without keeping college as the number one objective in your mind. And I think that when you do things with intention and actually because you enjoy them, your college process now becomes a lot more legit and it becomes a lot more easy to write about that stuff. So I think that first semester, like late first semester to second semester junior year, for me is where I would start with thinking about the college process. Before then, really just do things you enjoy and like trust me, it'll like make a lot of sense why as you start the application process and you're writing these essays.
Yeah, so I definitely say for me personally, I started thinking about it second semester junior year, started thinking about maybe who I'd want to ask for recommendation letters, maybe what I'd want to start writing about in my Common App essay, and started writing drafts for those. And something that I'd really recommend as honestly like a hard deadline is finishing your Common App by the end of the summer. Because I saw a couple of my friends that didn't do that and how much they struggled later on. I feel like getting your Common App essay out of the way first, which is arguably your most important essay because it's the essay that all of your colleges will see, is really important. Trying to finish that by the end of the summer and really perfecting it over the course of the summer, is something that really helped me with my time management. And then after that, I was able to allot all of my time towards supplemental essays, asking my teachers for recs, or actually asking your teachers for recs actually happens second semester junior year. But it allowed me to allot a lot of time towards supplemental essays, really perfecting my extracurricular activity list, perfecting what colleges I wanted to apply to, that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely finish your Common App by the end of your summer before your senior year. And then you'll have enough time for your supplemental essays and things of that nature.
Yeah, I really agree with all of those points. And I think that it's really important to sort of like know where you're like considering going to college during like your first semester of your junior year. And then during your second semester, that's when you sort of like started putting all of the pieces of the puzzle together, like getting the recs, starting thinking about ideas. And I really think it's important to utilize all of your summer, like even if you're going on vacation, like you can still use the other 2 months, even if you're not here for a whole month. Like really make sure that you use that time and that you're really like formulating everything the way that it needs to be. That way you can still stay on top of your grades when the fall semester rolls around. So yeah.
Another question from the chat is, what is your opinion on like weight tech and doing summer courses for extra credit? Like, how many classes should you take if you're going to take it at all?
So personally, I took a couple of weight tech classes like per year, like starting sophomore year. So sophomore, junior, and senior year, or up until the summer before senior year, I did take a couple of weight tech classes. What I would recommend is there are certain classes that are easy. You can take those like Introduction to Sociology, those kind of courses, where it's an easy GPA boost because all of these Wake Tech courses count as AP courses towards your GPA. But something else I would also recommend is try to lean on Wake Tech courses if those courses aren't available at your home high school, or if your schedule is too full to the point where you're not able to take certain classes that you want to take. So for example, for me, my schedule junior year was full, and so I wanted to take AP biology, but I couldn't. So then I took general biology 1 at Wake Tech. So that kind of thing where you're able to take courses that you're interested in and that maybe align with your major of interest or your career of interest. So that displays to colleges that you're taking the time to pursue academic opportunities related to your field of interest. I feel like that's really helpful. Seeking out those classes that are relevant to your interests. And yeah, the classes that aren't available at your home high school or that you aren't able to take because of schedule restrictions. So yeah, that's when I would turn to Wake Tech courses.
Yeah, I definitely think that WIG Tech courses can be really beneficial because it gives you the sort of that college feel because you get a professor and you get to sort of experience a little bit of college before you actually go ahead and apply. And it really shows that you're interested in whatever you're studying. And also, I really think that it is important to like pace out your time and make sure that you do have the time to take these courses. You don't have to take like 10, you can just take 2 or 3, just start easy and like work your way into it and just do what's best for you.
Yeah, I have no experience with Wake Tech courses.
Uh, um, Another question from the chat was, how important is a LinkedIn profile and how does that impact your application?
I definitely think that a LinkedIn profile, like that's not really relevant to the Common App, but it definitely improves your networking abilities and like getting internships and getting involved within your community and reaching out to professionals. So in that sense, yes, it helps you build your application, but it's not necessarily something that you showcase on your application.
Yeah, especially this. I mean, yeah, I agree with a lot of what Manu said. Like, there's real like your LinkedIn profile has like zero direct effects on your out college application whatsoever. It can be helpful to like contact other people, network, yeah, all that stuff, but it is definitely not a requirement. And at least in our school, like we do have like a dedicated time to like build a LinkedIn profile, but that's happened second semester, and it's really to help transition into college, not help get you into college. So.
Yeah, definitely what they were saying. It's more of an opportunity to gain access to the opportunities that you will put on your college app, like what Manu was saying about like the internships and maybe research opportunities. But even that, honestly, it might be a stretch for a high schooler. So yeah, I wouldn't stress too much about a LinkedIn profile. To be honest, it doesn't have too much of an impact on your college application.
And for our last question today, what are good examples of passion projects and how can you use them in your essays or college apps?
Like I think that it's in the name itself. It's a project that you're doing because you're passionate about. So like it's really dependent on you as a person. There's no formula for what a good passion project is, but just like to keep in mind that if you are interested in doing something outside of like your main extracurriculars and you're doing it for the fun of it, I think that like it's important to have a reason to do it. So like yes, you're passionate about this, but what is your end goal? So what I focused on with like whenever I would do something that like I guess is passion project-esque is that I was really interested in connecting like social equity to like economics and statistics and like things that I'm passionate about academically and how that can help within the community in and of itself. So a lot of the stuff that I focused on was community outreach, volunteering, and like developing resources for financial literacy because I was really passionate on that specifically. But my other friends, they might have, if they're interested in CS, they might have done like coding projects and stuff like that. There's no like one passion project that gets you into college. And like that's something to keep in mind. There's nothing that you can do that will innately be better than something else for college. It's really about your personal connection to it, and if you can write about it, and if it's actually impactful and meaningful to you. So make sure you do stuff with authenticity and passion rather than like, oh, this will help me get into college.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like if you're really passionate about something, it'll the project will be significantly more impactful than if you're just doing it for the college app. And I feel like once you're passionate about a certain subject, which is hopefully what you'll be applying for to college, like as the major, once you sort of have that passion down, you can maybe reach out to professors that can sort of assist you with potentially a project. Like you can cold email NC State, UNC professors about maybe your interest in a certain subject and how their research aligns with your interest in that, and maybe they could mentor you with a certain project. That could definitely be really helpful. And hopefully try to create some sort of project that has a tangible impact. You want to be able to merge your passion with some sort of real world impact. So you're displaying to colleges. Obviously, this isn't keeping colleges in mind. Like you're not doing it with the sole purpose of getting into college. But what colleges like to see is that you're able to use your passion, leverage your passion to create some sort of real world impact, which is hopefully what you'll continue to do if you're accepted to their university. So that's something that they really like to see, is some sort of real world, tangible, number-based impact, I'd say.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of those points, and I really think that whatever you choose to do, it's all about how it connects to your narrative, how it connects to your who you are as a person, and just showing that you are really committed to a certain cause is really more important than doing something just because your friend is doing it. And also sort of like with last minute projects, like things that are done like the summer before college applications, I feel like colleges can definitely see through that. So you definitely want to like plan ahead and make sure that you know what you want to do, and don't just do it for college, do it because you want to do it.
All right, I'll ask one more question for the sake of time. So, do extracurriculars need to be related to your career pathway?
I think like it's a very like I think it's like not it's a very like nuanced answer. Like I don't think any of us can like directly attest to it. But I think the biggest thing is like your number one priority should with extracurriculars is like again connecting that to your academic interest and like your interest as a person overall. Naturally, that will lead to like for me like a good amount of my extracurriculars were related to econ and finance, but not all of your extracurriculars have to be like doctored and like manufactured to be relating to your major. And a lot of times colleges like to see that you do stuff not just for the fun of it necessarily, but because you're interested in it. And you can be interested in stuff outside of your like outside of your direct like major. So like I did have a good amount of extracurriculars on my Common App that were related to economics and finance, but I do care a lot about political advocacy and like being a leader within my community. So I had things like student council and a lot of like dialogue stuff that I kind of facilitated. And I think that only increases your application because like colleges know that like they don't expect you to be like a full-time business analyst by the time you're in high school. So yes, they want to see you do stuff that you're interested in academics wise, but they want to see you do stuff that you're interested in like community development wise. And I think that's important to not just be super multi single faceted, like have things you're interested in, but also expand like have things you're academically interested in, but expand beyond that and like think about the community as a broader entity.
Yeah, I think it's really important to not be one-dimensional and really showcase like all of your interests, show them that you are a person with multiple talents, multiple interests, that you have a lot to offer. You're not just going to go to this college for one thing. There are multiple things that make you the perfect fit for that college. So definitely showcase your interests, but it is really important to have things that speak to why you're applying to the major that you are or the program that you are, because you do want to show why you want to go to that school.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely really important for your at least I'd say for me personally my top like 4 to 5 extracurriculars were all sort of relating to my major. Again, you don't want to come off as like super one-dimensional where like all 10 of your activities are related to the exact same subject. But you kind of want to develop some sort of coherent theme or surrounding your application where it's like okay, the admissions officers see these activities and they see that you're clearly interested in a certain subject and you're working on developing that interest in this subject through these activities and through some sort of real world impact. So yeah, it's definitely important that a good number of your extracurriculars relate to your major of interest. But definitely not like all 10. Like that's basically impossible. It's good to have some variance in there to show that you're not like super one-dimensional as well. So yeah.
Oh, what an amazing thing you guys did. Okay. So thank you so much, Pranav, Anirudh, and Manvi. You guys, I know you guys since childhood, but you are rock stars today and you're on the way to achieve something. So I totally appreciate your viewpoints and how clearly you have given the message to all the kids who joined. And a commendable job to Lakshmi and Rikhil, who are in 11th grade and moderating this panel. So I hope everyone got a clear message how to navigate your college application, what you need to focus on to achieve your dream, how to make it reality. So there are a lot of great tips have been given by these wonderful kids. We have everything is recorded on the YouTube. So I will be sharing this YouTube channel. And then if you still have more questions, if you're not part of the college group, I gave you my number, ping me, and then we can have separate sessions. But once again, this is a fruitful Saturday to everybody. And thank you all. And we will be ending this session now. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend and good luck to Pranav, Manu, and Ani to make your mark in your respective colleges. Good luck. Thank you all.